Will collaboration or competition define international space science and exploration in the 21st century? The answer could come down to how two spaceflight superpowers, the US and China, choose to engage with each other in the next few years. Elon Musk, the founder of the most powerful rocket company in the world now, said that the United States should be more open to the idea of cooperating with China on space programs, adding that he favors a modicum of cooperation with the East Asian nation, despite legislation that restricts NASA from using any federal funds to engage with the Chinese government. So why does Elon Musk favor it? The US and China, should they have a race or shake hands? Let's discuss this in today's episode of SpaceX Fans. But first, we have to talk about the Wolf Amendment. In 2011, Congress passed a law that included an add-on known as the Wolf Amendment, named after its mastermind, then Representative Frank Wolf of Virginia. The Wolf Amendment prohibits NASA from using federal funds to engage in direct bilateral cooperation with the Chinese government. Ever since, a potential repeal of the amendment has been a political football, tossed between hawkish factions eager to paint China as an emerging adversary in space and less combative advocates wishing to leverage the country's meteoric rise in that area to benefit the US. Proponents of the prohibition argue that the Wolf Amendment protects the American government from Chinese espionage. Opponents believe that rethinking this approach would not only help build trust between the two superpowers but could create a model for the next era of space exploration. It's impossible to know at this point if or how China's space ventures will affect the US space program, but some experts suggest it might be time for the US to search for common ground in shaping a more inclusive multinational space agenda. Now, what is the reason why Elon Musk wants the US to resume space cooperation with China? By most metrics, the US remains a global leader in space exploration. The Chinese government sat out the famous 1960s space race between the Soviet Union and the US, in which the US ultimately landed the first humans on the moon in 1969. But it's been easy to see in recent years that China is advancing its space agenda at a quickening pace and getting massive strides in space. The country promoted its partnership with Russia in March when announcing plans to build a research station on the moon to be tended by humans before 2031. Moreover, China has demonstrated that it can send sample return spacecraft to both the moon's near and far sides. Closer to Earth, China is also working on constructing its multi-modular space station, Tiangong. A core segment is already aloft and operational. Its 3-person crew recently returned to Earth. Next year, a planned rapid-fire schedule will bring more Chinese astronauts to Tiangong, plus supply ships and module add-ons, thereby bringing its assembly to completion. The China Manned Space Agency has given provisional approval to load the station with more than 1,000 scientific experiments, and it'll be inviting foreign participation via the United Nations. Bill Nelson, NASA's 14th administrator who was nominated by President Joe Biden, commented, "I think we have a very aggressive China. They said they'd put up a space station, and they did. They said they would bring back lunar samples, and they've done so. They are the second nation to robotically land and rove on Mars. They plan to put boots on the moon. They put it out there, and then they usually follow through. They never delay, as some famous rocket companies in the US now." I think he's looking at Blue Origin when he said that. With its plans for outposts in Earth orbit and on the moon, plus its planetary exploration of China program now heading farther into space, one wonders if the Chinese will someday become the lingua franca of our solar system. Jim Head, a Brown University planetary scientist and leading expert on space exploration, said that the one constant to China's space aspirations, whether in conflict or collaboration, is that they will not stop. China is on the Silk Road to space. They are doing it. There's no question about that. Their space program is important to them, and it establishes national pride and prestige. It's not just good for science, but for everything the nation does. If we sit and bury our heads in the sand and don't do anything ourselves, they are still going. They're not waiting for us. Those accomplishments have clearly caught Musk's attention. The CEO's goal has long been to make humanity multi-planetary, which he's tackling head-on with his space company SpaceX. But NASA, an important source of funds for rocket development, has its hands tied when it comes to cooperating with China. It's unclear what exactly Musk meant with some amount of cooperation, and it's unclear what role China should play in his view. But unlike Congress, Musk has had a much more positive relationship with China, especially when it comes to his car company Tesla, which has made substantial moves to expand its footprint in the country. There's certainly an argument that, given China's advancements in space, sharing knowledge could benefit both the country's space agency and SpaceX, with NASA mulling plans to eventually dismantle and destroy the International Space Station. China is racing ahead to establish its own orbital outpost. That means the country will soon have a permanent presence in space, while NASA may no longer have one. And of course, launching cargo and astronauts to the ISS is a major revenue source for SpaceX. So now here comes the question, is cooperation possible? Is it time for the US to work more closely with China, and should it start by repealing the Wolf Amendment? John Logsdon, a professor at George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs and founder of the university's Space Policy Institute, thinks so. I think we're going to see a mixture of cooperation and competition, probably between two blocks, one led by the US and one led by China, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. On the other hand, Bill Nelson said that he believes NASA is very much into a space race with China already, and that the US must be wary. He warned the Chinese civilian space program is, in reality, their military space program. That's why I think we are going into a space race with China. Furthermore, Nelson appears to favor the philosophy that friendly competition can breed haste and passion. After all, it was the US versus Soviet competition that got humanity on the moon in 1969, just 12 years after the Soviet Union launched the first satellite Sputnik 1 on October 4, 1957. Nelson has previously referred to the Soviet Union as America's mortal enemy. Yet, despite such a strong opinion, he's pleased with the way things evolved following the space race. The two nations eventually reached a stalemate that extended into space, where cooperation rather than competition reigns today. The jointly built International Space Station is a shining example, showcasing just what multinational collaboration can achieve. It has been crewed by both American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts alike, orbiting our planet every 90 minutes for more than 2 decades. That's the relationship Nelson would prefer the US had with China, but for now, China's penchant for secrecy stands in the way of any similar partnership. More transparency is what it will take, he believes. He says, "Things don't go swimmingly on terra firma, but in space they do. Leadership in space is leadership in a transparent way for all nations to join you. It calls for a certification from me that it does not affect our national security. So we'll take it on a case-by-case basis." So, cooperation in space between the two superpowers is unlikely to happen anytime soon. And it may not happen at all. Ever. And that concludes today's episode. Let me know what you think about the relationship between the two countries in the comments below. As always, thumbs up if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you won't miss out on new SpaceX Fans content. Once again, thank you so much. From all of us here on the team, see you next time.